gosh.
That the definition of hell is on your last day on earth, the person you became meets the person that you could have become. I say that about our nation. I say that about myself, that there is no becoming until you face the depth and the darkness of your own soul. There is no becoming without healing and without a radical acceptance of one's truth. I know that about myself growing up in poverty. Little chocolate girl with thick lips and wide nose in Rhode Island in 1965. I didn't see hope. I didn't see dreams. I just wanted to be somebody. I wanted success because I thought it was significance. And no one can describe the journey of going from the little chocolate girl searching for hope, searching for God, and the girl living a transcendent life. That is a hero's journey. I like this quote. You are shining herald of Michael B. Jordan.
Oh man. I don't even know where to begin. I wasn't expecting this at all, and I just want to quickly say that I'm so honored and privileged to be nominated in categories with people and actors and humans that I love, and I love their work and what you contribute to our craft. And this ride has been unbelievable. So thank you for welcoming me in and making me feel seen, bro. And y'all know how I feel about y'all. Mom, thank you for driving me back and forth to New York when we didn't have enough money to go through the Holland Tunnel, when we were looking for gas money, parking spaces, you know what I'm saying? When I went up there for my auditions, thank you. I want to thank you to Ryan Coogler for giving me the opportunity to show what I can do and to be fearless and to create a safe space for us to find the truth, what you do with all the other actors that we had the opportunity to work with. Woonmi, Miles, Delroy, Haley, Jamie, Lily, Omar, everybody that had something to do with this movie. You guys lent us your talents and you left us your time and your vulnerability. So thank you for allowing me to do my best work. And man, just being in this room right now with all these people who see me grow up in front of the camera and in these rooms, and I feel the love and support that you've always given me and encouraging me to go on and do my best. So just want to say thank you. And yeah, man, it's pretty cool. Yeah,
I am somebody. It doesn't matter where you live or who you are, you matter, because say it with me, I am somebody. You can overcome any obstacle because I am somebody. And we will continue his mission and carry the torch he lit and keep hope alive. And we will not be erased from this country's history. Because we are somebody. I am somebody. I am Felon Jackson. Because of you, we are somebody. Right on. Power to the people.
Good morning and peace and love, and welcome to Black Press USA's morning show, where we bring you the headlines and, of course, the culture. My co-host this morning is a former California Assembly member. He's also a former LA commissioner. Welcome.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Mike Davis. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Niel. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Yes, and you're also a professor at what college?
California State University, Long Beach.
Yeah, okay. And so, and you're also a member of the NAACP.
I am.
Um,
I'm a life member, in fact.
yeah, and we just celebrated the Image Awards over the weekend. And of course, you saw some excerpts from Viola Davis, who picked
Yes,
up the Chairman Award, and of
correct.
course, Samuel L. Jackson, who paid a beautiful tribute to Reverend Jesse Jackson, who we are celebrating the life of in this country
Yes,
as he prepares to travel back to Chicago for his final resting place.
absolutely.
And
Hmm.
you've before we get into the Image Award, since we're talking about Reverend Jackson, you were sharing some stories. You actually had an opportunity to work with Reverend Jackson as a young man. So tell us your favorite memory of working with Reverend Jackson.
Absolutely. In the 80s, when Dr. Reverend Jesse Jackson was the candidate for president in 1984, it was certainly a popular time in Los Angeles. Started my career with then Assemblywoman Maxine Waters, who was the chair of his campaign for president. And so I came along during a time in which we had known about Shirley Chisholm having run, but Jesse Jackson's campaign unfolded in a much major way than had ever been before. And as a new field representative getting involved in politics, for me, it was very rewarding knowing the history of this country, of the Democratic Party. When those who were political aides were involved in the process as African Americans, there was a fence at the back of the Democratic Convention. And traditionally, only the most senior aides and the most important aides could go past that fence. And in
Hmm.
the back of that fence is a trailer for every candidate. I came along at a time that was trailblazing because never before had an African American been able to cross that fence
Mm.
because we did not have an African American candidate with the number of resources that Jesse Jackson had. And so for me, it was a milestone to come into the business of politics in a time when a Black man had his own trailer beyond the fence. And
Mm.
most importantly, to have Black political aides, such as Congresswoman Waters and others, to walk past that fence. Heretofore, then, we would pass notes to the white aides and they would go back to the trailer to tell the
Mm.
candidate. But I came along in a very fortunate political time when we didn't have to pass a note. We were able to walk past that fence. And so as I came into politics, I remember the institutional change that Reverend Jesse Jackson made in the political process, specifically in the Democratic Party. And I think that history is important for anyone who understands and appreciates presidential politics.
What a great story. I mean, and you know, Black History was 2 days ago and we still talking about it. I love that story, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
The chat is chiming in. Good morning, Orange G. Good morning, Mike V, and everybody else that's listening on your ride to work or watching at home. Thank you for tuning in. So we saw clips from the NAACP Awards, which was on Saturday night. Some great moments, of course, Viola Davis's speech. I thought it was very profound.
Yes.
And just something to think about when she said the definition of hell is the day you die, the person you became meets the person you could have become.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that is a strong message to those that are still here, living and breathing. Don't be that person. You
Right.
know, achieve everything that you can, do
Hmm.
as much good as you can,
Hmm.
serve as much as you can. And
Hmm.
when you do reach certain places, you know, she ended her speech with dedicated it to just general, regular people, ordinary people who do extraordinary things. And I just, that really resonated with me. What were some of your takeaways from the NAACP Awards?
Well, I think that particularly was mine. And I think that story that she told, we personally can all reflect back on things that have occurred in our lives, no matter how great we are now. When we are honest with ourselves, there have been times that we were learning that we would have been even more than what we are today, no matter who you are. And so I think that was the most profound
Mhm.
message that I can take with me past the awards
Yeah.
when we look at who we are today, but know that no matter how great we are, in fact, we could have been greater had we
Yeah.
not been human and made some mistakes and had
Mm.
we learned from some of the things that we were taught earlier. But we're all human. And again, I think she had the most profound statement for me of the Image Awards.
I agree. A couple other takeaways. I loved the salt and pepper tribute. I think Span took it because she really knew how to say NAACP.
Yes, yes,
And a couple other highlights that I also enjoyed. I enjoyed Samuel L. Jackson's, speech
yes,
before the spot before we segue in. He talked about his days at Morehouse and
yes.
being part of the civil rights movement and the struggle. And it was just some great moments. A couple of things I wish they would bring back some type of musical performance. I think that would really make the show better. And I watched social media, and a couple of comments were that they want the NAACP to start honoring some new people. Like some people were like, Don Lemon got too many awards. Angela Bassett should have won for the 8th and 9th time. And that there's so much young and fresh talent out there, but they always pick the usual suspects. So that was one critique I heard or
Sure,
saw on
sure.
social media. But overall, I think it's also important to know that the NAACP is supposed to be voted by the people. So they have a time period to where the general public, you can vote. And so, I don't know. What are your
Well, I
thoughts?
think those are some very great, profound suggestions that should be embraced by the NAACP. Variety is, in fact, the spice of life. I think we have enough room for both ideas. We can certainly appreciate those veterans in the business, but why not be a part of an effort to include new people? I mean, a church that doesn't have new members is going to die soon. And
Oh,
so, such is the process for us in this organization. We have to create rising stars all the time. So I agree with you. Could not agree with you more.
mm. And then, of course, Michael B. Jordan picked up Actor of the Year for Sinners. Sinners
Yes.
won big at the NAACP, but they also won big at the SAG Awards last night, which
Mhm.
is huge because we know that is a predominantly white audience. And of course, Hollywood is a white industry that, of course,
Yes.
us African Americans thrive in.
Sure.
But to a certain degree.
Sure. Sure.
But Michael B. Jordan picked up the SAG Actors Award, which now makes him a strong contender for the Oscar. And I
Yes.
think that a lot of people were excited to see that, especially what happened after what happened last week at the BAFTAs. And then you see him come with such humility and just such, in awe himself
Hmm.
of being,
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
talked a lot about being a young actor, going
Hmm.
all the way
Hmm.
back to Fruitville Station, him and
Hmm.
Ryan Coogler coming up.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now look at him.
Hmm.
And so what were some of your takeaways from Michael B. Jordan over the
Well,
weekend?
I think we all have to like and appreciate the fact that he thanked his mother and he remembered the times and the journeys he went to and through to get there. And so for me, I appreciated that. And I really believe that Michael Jordan's time has come. And I think that he is very deserving of it. And it speaks to me and your earlier conversation is that we have to invite this new talent in and we have to nurture it and we have to
Mhm.
embrace it. So for me, I did love the fact that Michael was recognized, and I think that the NAACP, as you have stated earlier, we have to open our doors to. Reverend Jesse Jackson used to say, "We've got to let new wineskins in," and so you are absolutely, I think, right on in your observations.
All right, have to let new wine skin in. I like that. Okay, let's jump over to the chat. We spoke to Mike V and Orange G. Lady Leo is coming in with the good morning. David Youngblood, good morning. Sandra Brown, Big Cheese. I'm gonna let you respond to this comment from Big Cheese, Mike. He says the NAACP no longer serves the Black community and has prioritized illegal immigrants over the Black community. What's your response to that?
I think that we should continue in the NAACP to be assertive. And I think we should be even handed in terms of the work that we do. And that people should not feel in our community that the work we do favors one or another. It is those of us who are in the administration of service who must execute service in a way that those who we are serving don't feel that we're playing favorites. So I hold those of us who are in charge of administering the service of justice, of
Mhm.
freedom, to do it in a way that people understand we are embracing everyone. So his comment really is a message to us to look into the mirror in terms of how we are administering the service that we provide.
Well, okay. All right there. And I do think that last night was night before last was a strong representation of how one of the ways the NAACP does, strengthen our communities by highlighting us in arts and culture. Because as we see in these other award cycles, it is a huge thing when Black folks win, especially when you look at Best Actor, when you look at Best Actress, when you look at Motion Picture. Historically, if you look at the historical listing of it, as many Black people that have been nominated, very few have won. So the NAACP Image Awards is an example of how that organization uplifts what our contributions to arts and culture, because a lot of times in mainstream spaces, it's just not available to us. So I think that's one example. I think another example of how the NAACP serves us is when student loans, when Joe Biden was in office, and I remember how Young Wisdom, who was over the youth and young adult department or division of the NAACP, he spoke up against Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the NAACP advocated for student loans to be removed, student loan debt to be removed. And millions of people in this country, because of the NAACP, no longer have student loan debt. So, I think that, like we did, it could be, the organization can be critiqued, but we cannot dismiss all of the work and the strides that they continue to do today under the leadership of Derek Johnson.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And when we look at the arts in particular, if it were not for the NAACP, who would embrace the great, brilliant talent that is overlooked at the mainstream Oscars and the other shows in which many of our stars don't get the due recognition? And thank God for the NAACP Image Awards. It is the show of justice and recognition, as it should be.
100%. Okay, so Mike, we have a morning poll all the time. And Mike V started one already. He wanted to know, in chat, you could chime in on this. We were talking about Reverend Jesse Jackson earlier. And so let's take his question. Which actor would be best to play Reverend Jackson on screen? Who do you think, or who would you like to see? Let's just say if Ryan Coogler or Spike Lee or Ava DuVernay or Issa Rae or Lena Waithe decided to produce and make the life story of Reverend Jesse Jackson. Who would you think would fit?
Interestingly, I would think, what about Michael B. Jordan? Reverend Jesse Jackson was an athlete. Michael is an athletic prototype, if you will. He started out as a football player at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, better known as A&T. I think Michael Jordan could do it justice.
Michael B. Jordan. Okay, that's a good one. I could see that. I could see the afro, a young Jesse Jackson. I really could see that. All right, chat. So who do you think would be the best actor to play Reverend Jesse Jackson? And for me, I think I would like to see Ava DuVernay or a Spike Lee direct and produce that type of presentation. Right. I think I would like to see them direct and produce it. And I'm not mad at Michael B. Jordan. Who would you guys like to see play Reverend Jesse Jackson? And with that being said, let's jump into our first story before our guest comes. The Congressional Black Caucus, PAC, right? The Political Action Committee, and this is the arm of the Congressional Black Caucus where they endorse and support candidates. And of course, we're in a midterm, so they're going to be critical as to maintaining their historical number in Congress, as well as making sure that, you know, we're in the playing field. So they've sparked internal debate. I'm talking about the CBC by endorsing incumbent Adrian Espaillat. Now, this is a New York race, 13th district. Now, despite a crowded field of 8 challengers that include several Black political hopefuls, the CBC chair, Gregory Meeks, and he's the chair of the PAC, defended the move, citing that Adriano's longstanding leadership within the caucus. Now, he's Dominican American. I don't know, maybe some people consider that Black, maybe some don't. But Chat, how do you feel about the CBC endorsing non-Black candidates? And Mike, I'll turn that over to you.
Well, I think there are many questions that have to be asked. Is this person doing a good job? Is this person committed to justice and fairness? Has this person treated our community in a way in which we feel proud and we are satisfied? And if this person is an incumbent and has done a great job with us and we have no major complaints, what is wrong with supporting the continued work that has benefited our community? And if in fact we have a disagreement, we would have already perhaps expressed that. So in many ways, I think that being supportive of someone who's been supportive of you, as they say in politics, what have you done for me lately? Well, if he's done a lot for us lately, then I would ask the question of those doubting Thomases. What's wrong with supporting those who support you if we're talking about politics?
I want to push back on that because it is the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yes, it is.
And, you know, the question becomes like, you know, it's the caucus, you know, only Black when it is the foundation and the membership. But then the PAC, does it work against itself to support non-Black candidates when we're supposed to be building our power within Congress?
Well, the issue is really not that supporting this candidate validates our Blackness. It may be an issue of what our values are. Sometimes every Black face ain't Black. So sometimes you can have a Black person that doesn't support the issues that are important in your community. In California, we had a challenge with reparations and some Blacks who didn't support it in the way that the community wanted to support it. So yeah, we're Black. Yeah, we support Black. That's our priority, but we also have values. And so there are certain circumstances where we have values with people who have supported us. And again, what are we in? We're in politics. What does it stand for? What have you done for me lately? If he has done a lot for us lately, does that mean we're not Black for acknowledging that at this time? I don't believe that just simply because we're Black, that we have to be, to a degree, intolerant of others. And there will probably come a time that we do want a Black person. But then again, let's look more carefully at who the Black people are that's running and compare it with what has already been done for us.
Well, speaking of Chat, let us know how you feel. Mike V says, facts. Congressman Byron Donalds does not share the values of the CBC. That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Corvellin says, why does it matter? And he says, can I ask why is it okay that a Black caucus can exist, but white people can't have a white caucus? What's your response to that, Mike?
Well, there's a white caucus every day. And so if anybody has opened their eyes and looked around them, then they can answer that question for themselves.
All right. All right. And since we're speaking of midterms, Rep. Jasmine Crockett takes a double-digit lead. And she has a lot of her homegirls from the Congressional Black Caucus coming to campaign and stomp with her as she prepares for tomorrow. I saw that Ayanna Pressley is on her way there, if not already. And Jasmine Crockett holds a massive double-digit 56% to 44 over James Tallarico in the final days of the Democratic election, primary election. And polls show Crockett with an astounding 87% support among Black voters, positioning her as the clear favorite for the race. Of course, we have primaries happening tomorrow in Texas, North Carolina, in Arkansas. But Mike, you have been a candidate several times.
Sure.
And even if you're trending in the polls, do you feel comfortable or do you just ignore that and you keep going?
You must do the latter. You must ignore it and you must keep going. And to Jasmine Crockett, she's inspirational. And we need this kind of a story to emerge for all young people in general and for young African Americans in particular. I love the fact that most recently she got the endorsement of Kamala Harris, the first African American vice president in this country. And when I look back and reflect back upon the work that Jasmine did in the presidential election when we were in Chicago, it was exemplary. And I think that it was very important that Kamala Harris return the gestures that had been done and the work that Jasmine had done and support her. I wish her the very best, and I'm definitely hoping 1,000% that she will be the example that all of America can look back with pride.
And I think also a key takeaway from this story is that Crockett has an astounding 87% support among Black voters.
Yes.
I think that is critical to highlight so that Black people know that our vote still has power. Because with that 87%, she's not trending high at all. And so I think that we really have to amplify the fact that, you know, that's the one thing when we talk about what this Trump administration is doing and talking about having nationalized voting, when we talk about, you know, having ICE agents at the polls, is because he understands the power of the Black vote and of the minority vote in general, and he wants to crush it. And so folks need to know that Jasmine Crockett will win because of our vote. I think that's critical for us to know.
Absolutely. And she should win when we look at the journey that she has experienced to get where she is today, having worked so very hard for the Democratic Party, but more importantly, having worked very hard for her own state of Texas, and only to be jeered out of her seat and then having to decide what to do. And I think young people can look at her example and see that what you do when you're given lemon, you make lemonade. And she went on further to go from the lower house, the state representative house, to the upper house of the U.S. Senate. That is how she used her energy. That was her solution to the crisis she found herself in. And I think problem solving can be observed through the work that she is doing and the journey that she is going through. And so that is why she is such an important example to young people everywhere in every community. And again, I wish her the best. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta, my fellow Greek. And I know that the work she has done as an attorney matters. But most importantly, I would also say that she's not a person who sits in Congress. She speaks out. She is an advocate for injustice.
And I think also, too, that's what makes her such a great lawmaker and a great candidate for Senate, is because of her law experience, right?
Yes.
So when she goes into those committee hearings, she knows how to question people. And I think a lot of people take that for granted. Like, yeah, I think anybody can run for office, but I think sometimes you have to pay attention to the candidate's resume. Jasmine Crockett is an attorney, and you see that That's why she goes viral a lot, right?
Right.
Because she knows the right questions to ask based upon who she's talking to. And that's key. And so we'll be paying attention. As I said, tomorrow is a big day for primaries as we look at the midterms. So if you're in Texas, if you're in North Carolina, if you're in Arkansas, let that know that 87% of the vote belongs to Black folks in Texas. That's going to push her over. Know that your vote can do the same. And speaking of the Trump administration, speaking of him trying to nationalize voting, threatening to send ICE agents to polling places, Georgia, Fulton County became ground zero this year when something happened when the Trump administration went into the Fulton County election offices and just took, and it's unclear if it's legal, but they took a lot of voter data. Take a look at this clip.
It's intentional for people to be in office who have the skills to deal with these things. And all of us are trying to come together to figure out what to do next. There's a band of people working on because we're under assault. I mean, I think you know that.
Is this unprecedented?
Of course. He's unprecedented. Right? It is. How confident are we? It is. We just had a town hall last week on Thursday about elections. We knew this was going to happen. This is about sowing the seed of fear that people will not show up to the polls in May and November. This is what it is. We're 100% sure this is what it is.
Joining us now is Fulton County Commissioner for District 4 and a candidate for Fulton County Commissioner Chair. Please welcome Mo Ivy to the Black Press Morning Show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. We were having this conversation, as you heard, about, Trump trying to nationalize elections, polling places, but ground zero is Fulton County. So talk to us about what happened for our viewers who are not aware. I think it was last month.
January 28th.
Yep, the Trump admin went in and seized files. Talk to us about what files they took and what actually happened.
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everybody. And first, let me just say, very big shout out to my fellow lawyer and soror, Jasmine Crockett, there in Texas. I wish her all of the luck. We have elections coming up here in Georgia, our midterm elections as well. So I'm just spreading, all the good vibes for her over there in Texas. I'm sure she will prevail. But back to Fulton County, it was January 28th. And just about, a month ago that it was just a regular day and about 40 FBI agents showed up at the Fulton County registration office. Right there, you see Nadine Williams, who is our director of elections and registrations. And they came not to get files, but to get the actual original 2020 ballots. And they walked away with 656 boxes on 24 pallets of ballots, register tapes, some, miscellaneous voter information, but most importantly, absentee ballot envelopes, which have people's personally identifiable information on it, their addresses and their names. And they still have those documents right now.
Mike, you want to go?
Well, in terms of the action that has been taken by the federal government, has there been any response to them in terms of when they will return, or if in fact they will return all of the evidence? I would allege that they think that they have some evidence for some reason. What kind of response have we received from the federal government about their action?
Yeah, well, they are not in communication with us. I mean, they do not call us and say, "Oh, your documents are being well taken care of over here in Quantico, Virginia." No, it was a very serious, intense raid. We asked for the documents to be inventoried before they took them out, like each box, so we could videotape each box that they were taking, and they said no. So what action we took was we are fighting in court right now to get those documents back. We do have an electronic copy of the ballot. We do. But ballots don't have anything on them. All it is a piece of paper with who somebody voted for. It doesn't have who that person is or where that person lives. So that original ballot is not necessarily important for the sense of like who somebody voted for or whatever. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election in Georgia.
Yes.
So that it's been counted, recounted, re-audited, audited. Lawsuits have been filed over it. There has never been any fraud found to have taken place in Fulton County elections in 2020, in 2024, any years before that. So it's curious that he's not asking us for 2024.
Well, the great news is,
worried, if he is so worried about Fulton County and the way that we administer elections, he should be worried about all elections.
Right.
that is correct.
He's only worried about 2020. So we are fighting in court. We were to go to court last Friday on the 27th to talk about retrieving our documents back. And the judge instead ordered mediation of the parties. So let's imagine that. Donald Trump mediating with Fulton County. The United States government mediating with Fulton County over documents that they already have.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So this is a Trump appointed judge. We understand that this is just an exercise in nothingness because we will get to a mediation. And I don't even know if a representative from the other side will even come. They've had our documents now for a month. I mean, the real issue is that these documents don't belong to him, right?
That's correct.
The Constitution says these documents do not belong to him. He is illegally holding documents that should not be in his possession.
That's
that's
correct.
a real issue.
Let me ask you this. For the people at home, why is it so dangerous for the current administration to have their hands on actual physical ballots and personal ID information from 6 years ago? Why is this so? Why should people care?
Well, people should care because this is just a setup for a bigger play, right? This isn't really just about like, oh, let me get some absentee ballot envelopes from voters in Fulton County. What he wants to happen in Fulton County is he wants to sow the seeds of mistrust and doubt in Fulton County. And why Fulton County? Because Fulton County is the most populous Black county in Georgia. It is number one, the most populous county, period. But then number two, it has the most Black voters. And when people turn out in Fulton County, it changes the outcome of elections in all of Georgia. So then we know if Georgia is in play, then it has an impact across the entire country. So that's why Fulton County, okay?
That's right.
This is not about 2020. He can't do anything about 2020. This is about influencing people not to go to the polls in 2026 because he knows if we do, he will lose power in the House and the Senate, and then he will lose power over America. That is what this is about. And so this isn't just happening in Fulton County. This is happening everywhere. He's trying to take complete control of elections so that he can control the outcome.
Right. And I think to your point, the administration needs to be put on notice. We have a system of trustworthiness, and there are some backup to the things that they have taken. And so they need to be aware of that. And I hope that they are aware of that so that we have some digital backup of what they have taken. And again, it is inevitable that you have stood the test of time in your system and the way that you implement your service. And there have never been any questions about the way that you have run your election. And you cannot go back and create something that does not exist. You're valid and you're reliable, and that has already been proven. So anything else is just theatrics. Quite frankly,
it is total theatrics. And listen, even Republicans in his own party, our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who has completely said that the elections in 2020 were valid. He is the person that Donald Trump had called for those 11,780 votes, to which he said no to. He has said over and over again that there is absolutely no reason to recount anything pertaining to 2020 because 2020 is closed and over with. And he even said when Donald Trump asked him in 2026 to turn over the Georgia voter rolls, he said, I will not, the entire voter roll, which he's going state by state asking for. Our Secretary of State said, a Republican, said, no, that is illegal in our state, and I will not do it.
And I hope that they understand in no uncertain terms, if they try to misrepresent what they have, there is a backup. You can
Absolutely.
fool some of the people some of the time, but never all of the people all of the time.
All right, I want to get this question in. You recently announced that you're running for Fulton County Commissioner Chair, and we know Fulton County is often under the national microscope. What is the one thing you believe is broken in the current county leadership that you are uniquely qualified to fix?
Yeah, I think that it is time for a new leadership. Our current chairman, Mr. Rob Pitts, has been in office since 1977. And it is time for a new wave of leadership that can address the modern issues that we have. Right now, we have a jail, the Fulton County Jail, known as the Rice Street Jail, which is under a federal consent decree. For people who don't know what that means, it means essentially that the conditions are so poor in the jail that the federal government had to come in and take it over. And he has been in office for more than 2 decades, and this is the second consent decree. It is time that we deal with this human rights crisis that we have in our jail that is filled with our community. 70 to 90% of the people in our jail are suffering from mental health problems and not getting the kind of treatment that they need. There are people in our jail that should not be there, with, whether it's for a misdemeanor or a nonviolent offense, that do not need to be incarcerated in a jail that is literally crumbling to the ground and is inhumane. So that is one of the number one issues. Though the second issue is we've got to deal with healthcare in our county. Our hospitals closed, 2 main hospitals closed more than 4 years ago, and they have still not been replaced, and there is no plan in our budget to deal with that. People who live in South Fulton, which is, of course, mostly us in the southern part of our county, do not have a hospital to go to if they are suffering an emergency crisis. Some have to travel an hour to get downtown to get to Grady Memorial Hospital. So we also have a healthcare crisis in our county. And then lastly, we have got to follow the money. We have seen, I think this is a tale that people see in so many counties. The north side of the county continues to prosper while the south side of the county continues to go unserved, continues to not have the services that it needs. And it is just time to follow the money and to figure out why we have decade after decade after decade been unable to solve the problems on the south side of our county, which is where our jail is, which is where our healthcare desert is, and where most of the people are struggling to make it day to day. And as a county that has a $1.5 billion budget, we should be able to take care of our citizens from the north side of our county to the south side of our county. And it is time for new leadership.
Yeah, and I would add that public health is probably the most important task that the counties have.
Absolutely.
And that healthcare service should be equally accessible to every area geographically of any county in this country. So I think that you're absolutely right in terms of the agenda that you have to make sure that there's accessibility to healthcare, to public health.
We have a question from one of somebody in the chat. Mike V is asking, why didn't code inspectors of the city inspect the jail annually to know that the conditions were crumbling to the ground?
So the city is not involved with the county jail. So the city is different from the county, and the county inspectors do not have anything to do with the condition of the jail, which is under the purview of the county. So the county funds the jail and the sheriff operates the jail. The sheriff must have the adequate funding in order to operate the jail correctly. And he has not been funded correctly. The jail has been falling apart, and the leadership of this county has not made the jail a priority. That is why it's time for a change.
Great.
And with the just a couple more questions. And with the elections coming up in Georgia, with all of what the Trump admin is doing, what are voters saying in Fulton County? Are they hesitant to vote now? How are they feeling about their data being taken? Can you have you heard from any of your constituents about that?
Yes. I am a town hall queen. So I had a town hall on the night after the raid. I brought my constituents together, and I go all around my district, making sure that I know exactly what constituents are thinking. And they are concerned about the federal government coming into a county that has pristine election operations and just doing a smash and grab, which is exactly what that was. And so they are more resolute than ever. Here's the thing. Donald Trump can do all the things he wants to do, but you are in charge of your vote. That he can never take away from you. So Fulton County voters have said to me, Mo, I am going to make sure I check my registration at the Secretary of State's website. I'm going to make sure that everyone in my household is registered. And then I'm going to make a plan to go vote, because nobody's going to keep me from exercising my right to vote. And that is exactly the right thing to do. You are the one that has the power over your vote. Donald Trump can come in here and take every single document he wants, but he can't take your right to vote away from you. And that is the power that you have to fight him. And that is the thing that he is the most worried about that you will do. So I tell everybody in Fulton County, my voters, and countywide, get ready to make a plan to vote when early voting starts on April 27th, or if you like to vote on Election Day on May 19th. But do not let this bully in Washington come to Fulton County and affect what we know we do best, which is show up at the polls and vote for our rights.
Wonderful.
And last but not least, you mentioned the current commissioner has been there since the 70s. Do you think that it's time for term limits?
Sure. I'm an opponent of anything that the people think is a good way to have people in office that fight for their rights and their interests. And if that means that every 8 years or whatever the amount of time would be that they think a new person should come in with fresh new ideas, then I would 100% support that. I do not have a problem. I look at so many, I'm also a law professor. I teach at the Georgia State University School of Law. And I look at all of these young lawyers that I'm bringing up, and I think to myself, they're going to be fantastic lawyers one day. And I want them to be the next group of people that come in and represent the bar and represent what people need their interests to be taken care of in a courtroom. So I absolutely believe in a next generation coming up. That idea of holding on to power just because people have been used to voting for you when your ideas haven't worked, when it's time for refreshed and renewed leadership, I am not for that. So this is why I'm running. I have nothing to lose by running except being able to come in and help my constituents and the people in Fulton County to move in a better direction forward. If they believe that our chairman is the person that is going to take them forward, then that's who they should vote for. But I think that they know with the crises that we're in with our jail, our courts, and our health care, it is time for a new voice.
And how can our viewers and everybody paying attention learn more about your campaign and keep up with you?
Yeah, I'm very active on social media. And so on Instagram, you can find me at the Mo Ivory, MOIVORY, like the soap. And then my website is just moivory.com.
Any closing remarks before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to say that I think that the most important thing that voters need to know is to have leaders that tell them the truth. It's not always easy to hear what's happening in government. I don't like to call myself a politician because I cannot stand the politics of it all. I want to be an elected official that tells you the truth about the condition that we're in and how we can fix it to move forward. And that takes somebody who's just not always worried about getting reelected. And that I'm not that person. I have a fantastic life outside of being an elected official. I'm doing this because I believe in service and I believe in people who can come to the table, tell the facts, tell the truth, and explain it to the people in plain English so they can understand it. And that's what I offer. So it's been a pleasure serving, and I hope I can continue to.
Oh, well, we would love to have you back. Yeah, we would love to have you back too, as of course we're tracking what's happening between Fulton County and the Trump administration. So good luck, Commissioner Mo Ivory. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Best wishes.
All right. Let's head to Kansas, where you guys, I don't know if you've heard this, but this blew my mind when I was talking to Flame Monroe, who is a comedian, transgender. Her pronouns are she, he, we. And she told me about this story and it blew my mind. Kansas lawmakers have invalidated driver's license and birth certificates for transgenders. Now, the new law gives no grace, so it's effective now for the law, meaning that trans and non-binary people will immediately have invalid documents if they have identified with now, how they're living now under their transgender life. They risk jail time up to 6 months and $1,000 fine if they're pulled over, let's just say today, for a law that just passed, and they haven't even had time to respond or even know about it. The law also restricts bathroom use to assign sex at birth, and it allows citizens to sue transgender people for up to $1,000 for not complying. Now, the new law, called the House substitute for Senate Bill 244, passed after legislators overrode the governor's veto to rush it through legislation.
Well, I think in law and in policy, there are some basic principles and concepts that everyone in the country need to understand. Often, the preeminent law is the federal law. We still have on the books, despite this whole attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we still have the Civil Rights Act of 1964 on the books. We still, by federal law, do not discriminate under Title VI based upon race, creed, color, sex, orientation, national origin, religion, etc. It's still on the books. It still is the law. And federal law trumps, I thought, state law, unless it changed some day or two ago. And so this Civil Rights Act is still active, and people are entitled to their rights. They don't have to satisfy us. They don't have to agree with us. They are entitled to these inalienable rights.
But they took the rights away. And I'm not even saying that, I mean, as a lawmaker, you can do that, but to not allow even a grace period. Okay, laws, they change, they flip-flop all the time. But, not to even have a grace period to enact something today, and not, that it takes 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes 6 weeks to get your driver's license back, right?
Right.
Your birth certificate, that's not an overnight process. So to be able to set people up to be arrested, just seems inhumane.
What I'm saying is that state law doesn't trump federal law. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 is a federal law. The law in Kansas is not preeminent. It doesn't supersede the Civil Rights Act and the current laws on the book. Now, I do realize we have a conservative court, but obviously we need to fight this out in court. People are entitled to their rights.
Right. No, and I totally get that. But we're talking about a Trump Klan administration. We're talking about, like you said, a Supreme Court that is conservative.
That is correct.
There's no protection for these people in Kansas, and they're most vulnerable now because they have to figure out, okay, I have to change my birth. It's just a confusing thing. And I just feel like, there's no grace in this whole situation. And it also sets a precedent, right? Because if it happened in Kansas, guess what? We were just talking about voting in files in Georgia, in Fulton County, which is a precedent for other states. This Trump administration is setting a very dangerous precedent on multiple levels.
That is absolutely correct. And I go back to the civil rights law because it's a blanket. It's several patches woven together for the rights of all of us. Ours was a journey around discrimination on race. This is a discrimination issue in gender. And yet they're still the same. It is a denial of those rights that people are entitled to. And we had to, in race, fight this issue. And it's no different than any other kind of form of discrimination on gender, on religion, on national origin. We have to fight all of this. As Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And this is just yet another example of why that remains to be true.
Mm, mm. So the chat is they're kind of quiet on this subject. And the thing about it is my only concern with it is that there's no grace in the period of the change. You know what I'm saying? And so these people in Kansas are vulnerable. And we know that we have an administration that has federal agents that we don't know if they're Klan members. We don't know if they're, white supremacists. We don't know if they've had proper training. And you just have this lawlessness that is happening under this administration that makes these people in Kansas very vulnerable to some very racist and scary things. So we're going to continue to track that story.
Sure.
And let's head to some international news where, of course, we saw over the weekend that the Trump administration has struck Iran, Dubai, and I'm talking about the U.S. and Israel. And the last time the U.S. and Israel waged attacks on Iran was a 12-day war that I forgot about, which happened last June. And the civilian toll in Iran was heavy. But one of the big stories that came out of the strikes over the weekend was the U.S.-Israeli missile strike on a girls' elementary school, killing 165 people, which is not getting much coverage. And this story is coming from Al Jazeera. Reporter Mohammed Val said that the attacks called to question U.S. and Israeli claims that they are targeting only military targets. And of course, this young girl's school, elementary school, was not a military target that killed 165 people, which is very scary for me, Mike, because I think about what retaliation looks like, even on American soil.
Well, the international issues that are at play need to be a little bit more profound in terms of us understanding the dynamics. But we do know generally that we prefer peace to war. Not knowing all of the details of the reasons for the war, we definitely would prefer peace, is what I could say. I don't have the intelligence in terms of what made us want to make the decision to go to war, but we can all say, for those of us, many of whom are Christian, that we do not prefer to have war and or to hurt or harm or maim anyone over a disagreement about any policy issue, which this has to be centered around in some ways. We would like to know more details about what is going on in terms of the differences of opinion here. But is war the solution? And were there other resolutions that could have been implemented before we decided to go to war?
Well, I think too, like the question of, them targeting military targets and hitting an elementary school of young girls, killing 165 people. I think that's what has everybody like, regardless to the reasoning why, if the targets are military bases, how does an elementary school get struck, right? But that's war, right? There's no rhyme or reason to it. They're going to be, you heard Donald Trump say that, they're going to be casualties. It's just bound to happen. And so, and then when you go on social, and when you go on the internet now, this story was untrackable. I mean, I had to go all the way to Al Jazeera's news source to get this information. I saw it on my timeline, and then you have to fact check it. But you fact check it, but you can't find it on. I don't see anybody else, or it's not popping up on the Google search. It's not popping up on the Bing search. And so you see this censorship that's also happening with our, internet and technology. Greer, you want to chime in?
Yeah, and I wanted to speak to that point because I think it's extremely important for journalists and certainly for Black media to be careful about how we report this, largely because we can't rely on the intelligence of the U.S. government, right? And I saw a number of, I check out on the weekends, I'm gonna tell you. This stuff is just too overwhelming for me. But I did see a number of local news stations on YouTube report things about who was killed in terms of leaders that just wasn't accurate. You know, BBC and other news organizations who, you know, don't necessarily have the same political involvement that, you know, our newsrooms do, reported otherwise, right? And so I think it's important. We understand why those details are being circulated, but I think it's extremely important that we do not fall into that trap and, you know, and share information that's not accurate. And that's the sad thing, because when you have a tragedy like this happen, and we have to make sure that people are aware and that people are safe, you know, you want to be able to deliver accurate information. And I think if it were not for some of those, like, you know, I think that there was some athletes who were in Dubai whose, their travel had been interrupted. If it had not been for those independent, you know, accounts coming from people, even just some of the details of what was happening on the ground, that some mainstream newsrooms were reporting that were not accurate, we wouldn't know. But the fact that there's so many of those different accounts, conflicting accounts, we have to do our best, do our due diligence to make sure that that information is accurate.
Right.
I agree, and we do have to know the facts. They are critically important. And when we don't know the facts, we can't jump to a conclusion. We can only hope that if war was chosen, that it was chosen as a last result and not a...
Well, not under this administration. I mean, you know, under this administration, I mean, I get the facts. That's why, like, I went to Al Jazeera, because that is a definite trusted news source when we talk about foreign affairs, especially in the Middle East. And in the continent of Africa, they are a source that will give you a totally different perspective of what's happening here in the United States. And that is where that account of the 165 people being killed within the school, like I said, the journalist from Al Jazeera is Mohammed Viles, so you can go and look that up. And so, I mean, to me, the most startling thing is that the military from the United States and Israel said that they were only supposed to be targeting military targets. So how does a young girl, elementary school, get struck like that? Which is the question. And in those types of things. But to Greer's point, also, it's like, you know, when you look at the Ellisons, you know, trumping, for lack of better words, Netflix, and taking over this Warner Brothers acquisition, and them being able to control CBS News, CNN, you know, the truth will get distorted, because we already see it happening at CBS. We see career trusted journalists resigning because of the storytelling that this Trump administration and their allies want to be told. And so we're in some scary times when, you know, trusted news organizations now, like independent journalists, can be shadow banned because of because of being truth tellers. And so all of this information is important. We don't know why, particularly, we struck Iran. Dubai was hit. Okay.
Right.
One of a hotel in Dubai was hit. And to Greer's point, there's a basketball player from USC, Mike, that is over in Iran. And I started following her because she's having to go to shelter bunkers every day in Iran.
I see.
And she's telling the story. And then you have, like, you know, just everyday regular Black folks that have decided to choose peace over politics and travel in the world. And they're over in Dubai. Some of them are saying, yeah, the hotel did get hit. The Palms Hotel did get hit, but everybody's going about their day, business as usual. And so I'm glad that we have those stories coming out from those individuals, but we also need to know what is really going on. Some people are saying this is all a distraction from the Epstein files. the closer you get to Donald Trump, the more he does in antics, right? Whether it's ICE here in the United States or whether it's a bomb. We know conversations right now are getting closer to Trump and alleged underage girls and him allegedly taking advantage of them. And these stories being redacted from the Trump file, from the Epstein files, allegedly. But that was a huge story that was brewing from Ted Lieu, our Congress member. He said it out of his own mouth, Mike, a couple weeks ago. And now it's getting closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, oh, look over here. So there's a lot of factors that go into why this could be happening.
Well, what we can definitely say for sure is that we believe that the American citizens, based upon our observation, would prefer that war not be something in which we engage, and that we know that our values are that war is the last result, not the first result, not the second result. That in terms of solving problems, we would hope that we would think of every other kind of method, diplomacy and other things that we can do to resolve a matter. And to comment without knowing the details puts us in a precarious situation in terms of finding out later that there was something critical that occurred for which we had no knowledge. But again, we agree, war is not something that we embrace. We don't agree with it. We definitely don't want to destroy or kill others. We don't believe we have the authority to do so as a measure to resolve a problem that could have been solved some other basic kind of way. So,
Mike, you know a lot of scholars, so maybe you can find one of your scholar friends who knows foreign policy, foreign affairs, and maybe you could bring them back to help us break down what is actually happening over in the Middle East. What is the United States' role in all of this? And why are we just so attached to Israel?
Yes. Yeah, because I definitely can identify some individuals who are specialists in foreign affairs. Of course, I'm a specialist in the United States. So we could definitely do that. But, you know, we all have values. We all know what we believe. And so even though I haven't specialized in foreign affairs, I know that we believe that peace is the measure of operation that we embrace and not war. And we hope that's the last result.
So, Chat, you heard it. Mike is going to come back hopefully next week with somebody from Foreign Affairs to come break down what's happening in Iran and the U.S. and Israel's role in all of this. Thank you so much. So, Mike will be back with that scholar or professional. So, let's light things up before we get out of here. Essence has announced its 19th annual Black Women in Hollywood class under the theme Off Script. Now, this is leading up to, of course, the Academy Awards. So that's the next phase. So this year's honorees include Kerry Washington, Latanya Richardson Jackson, Zinzi Kugler, and breakout star Chase Infinity. Now, the event is being framed as a celebration of Black women moving beyond traditional titles to seize deeper creative ownership in the industry. And of course, Kerry Washington, I don't know if you guys know, she's behind Reasonable Doubt. So she's an executive producer of that show. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to binge watch it. From the soundtrack, the curation of the music, and just the storytelling is just really good. And of course, Zinzi Kugler is the wife of Ryan Coogler, and she was very instrumental in an EP on Sinners. And so, you know, it should be an affair. And that's something that a lot of Black women who are filmmakers and who are, you know, just actresses, they look forward to the Essence event leading up to the Academy Awards.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. And I think that Black women certainly should be embraced in Hollywood and deserve to have more roles in many of our Hollywood projects. We've said that years ago, and that work is not undone. We continue to make sure that we pursue roles where Black women have their due.
You know, and bringing it full circle with the NAACP, that's why the Image Awards is so important. Even though, you know, there's some things we feel like, you know, like let more younger creators or unknown in to really be contenders and not pick the usual suspects. But they also advocate for equal spaces or as much diversity in Hollywood. And one of the testaments to that is Beyond the Gates, which is the CBS soap opera that is in partnership with the NAA that is doing extremely well on CBS. Although many are paying attention because of the new ownership, how long, CBS will allow Black, stories, like even the NAACP, that's on a CBS, a Ellison owned network now. So it'll be really interesting to see how the NAACP navigates this situation with the Ellison family because they're so close to Trump and pushing his agenda.
Yes, absolutely.
And last but not least, let's get to our Black facts. All right. So today on March 2nd, 1955, 15-year-old Claudette Cloven was arrested in Montgomery, Alabama for refusing to give up her business seat, a pioneering act of resistance 9 months before Rosa Parks. And so, when we talk about Black history beyond February, Miss Cloven is the one who refused first.
Right. Okay. And I noticed that she was from Montgomery as well. So that Montgomery system was very famous for its segregation in transportation. What I've also noticed is in history that African Americans chose transportation systems as one of the systems to integrate, even back to Plessy versus Ferguson. It was the train that oftentimes was a campaign that African Americans chose to test integration. Not only did Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, but you also had Dr. Benjamin Mays from Morehouse during his tenure as an educator. He attempted to integrate the train as well. And though we moved from the train to obviously the bus with Rosa Parks and Miss Colvin, as we see prior to her.
Why do you think that Claudette Cloven wasn't as, popular? Like somebody like a Fannie Lou Hamer too. Like these are some names that we are now being taught about. Some of us who know Black history and are more in depth into our culture, we knew. But why do you think those names are just now being known? While others are always the heroes and the sheroes of the
Well, we always find it in history. Why is Mamie Smith at Friendship Baptist Church not as famous as Diana Ross? Because Diana Ross had the machine of Berry Gordy and Motown behind her. And Rosa Parks had the machine of Dr. Martin Luther King and the Black churches behind her. And Miss Cloven did not. So this is a part of our history. We have people who can sing just as well as anyone else, but they are not able to record because they don't have the political
I think you should have used Mahalia Jackson, not Diana Ross.
Okay, we can use
I love
we'll use Mahalia, but Mahalia had the church behind her, which made her more important. But you're right. I should have kept it all gospel.
No, I think that was it was funny. But yeah, I agree with you. I wanted to chime in there with Dr. Mike, because we forget that the NAACP orchestrated the Rosa Parks.
Yes,
that was orchestrated.
Yes,
and because they had an objective.
And see, that's the little known fact that's not known, that it was orchestrated. We just really thought, and even the movie.
Also, and King was multifaceted in the orchestration, because King had his own network and he would call his work campaigns, a civil rights campaign. And so he was a part of that. And, of course, he ended up establishing his own organization, SCLC. But you're right, NAACP was involved in it because Rosa Parks was a prominent member of the NAACP. But King had a network of pastors who are some of the most powerful people in the Black community when it comes time to talk about their relationship with people. They meet every Sunday with their people. Politicians don't even meet regularly to that degree with their people. They see them, but they don't have a meeting every Sunday. So you put those two networks together and you have a powerful foundation upon which Rosa Parks stands. And that she was very successful because of that support. So,
but why
absolutely.
do you think even in the movie, you know, she appeared to be this woman who was tired and got on the bus? Why do you think that they didn't want people to know that it was orchestrated?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it being orchestrated because, again, when we look at the journey of African Americans in this country, we had attempted to orchestrate Plessy versus Ferguson before the Supreme Court. We weren't successful.
David Youngblood said she was pregnant.
Yeah, I was getting ready to go into that. Claudette Colvin was young. She was, you know, a teenage girl. And then she also got pregnant, you know, a few months after the incident. You know, you got to remember our folk, you know, a part of our ascension into politics and changing laws and all of these things, you know, respectability politics played a huge role in that, right? You had white folks in leadership positions, you know, openly said, well, if the Negro would act more like the white man, right? And we didn't learn until 2019 that these things that we were aspiring to be, I'm talking about collectively, this collective consciousness of Black folks of trying to be or emulate white folks, that this was it wasn't real. You know, at this, you know, Donald Trump's ascension. I mean, a lot of us knew that already, but I'm talking about, I think overall, not real. But Claudette Colvin and NAACP and other organizations like that, you know, image played a huge role in every political group, a social group that, you know, was trying to get ahead. When the LGBT, you know, just say LGBT, just keep it there. Y'all know the other
queer, just say queer community.
The LGBT community, when they were, you know, trying to get right in the late 60s and 70s, they wore suits, right? They weren't coming out drag queens, and that stuff didn't happen till much later. So the visual, you know, presentation played a huge part in these conflicts.
Because even when you think about the March on Washington and Baynard Rustin, you know, he was a gay man, and that was just something they said, they weren't going to address that. You know, these were the issues that they wanted to address. So to your point, you know, appearance was everything, and they picked and choose what they wanted to advocate for what was most important and best for Black folks at that time. And so, you know, to your point, I understand the Claudette Colvin, she was pregnant, and they just didn't want any parts of it. I get it. You know,
they didn't want it to distract from the mission was to, you know, to change laws, right?
Right.
To exploit, she was a young girl, to exploit that, and what the goal was something much different.
Right. Baynard Rustin, the same thing. You know, the goal was not, you know, rights for the queer community. It was for, you know, fighting for equality, but just not that equality. So I mean, and to your point, like the dignity of what we look like, you know, appearance was everything. You know, put your belt on, you know, put your stockings on, have you know, appearance, attire, all that went. It was all about dignity and what it was supposed to be, I guess, at the time.
And then Rosa Parks was a person who we know exemplified those values that were just talked about. We knew that she was a staunch, loyal, revered member of the NAACP. So she was able to present in a way that would allow us to implement this campaign.
Do we think color had anything to do with it? Greer?
Her color?
Do you think her color had anything to do with it?
In our community. And we know that has a lot to do with it. It's always been. And I love that history about us, that we are of many different colors and different backgrounds, and we all are African Americans. So I love that experience, and it goes all the way back to slavery. So yes, we know that the different hues of color that we are I think it's a beautiful thing.
But I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but in context of what we're talking about, though.
Yeah, but
was it a beautiful thing?
Yes, because as in anything that you market, you know what marketing is all about. Yes, sometimes that is to the advantage of what we're trying to market.
Interesting.
Right. Well, yeah, because sadly, there are some people in our community who still view things in that way. I mean, look at 50 Cent and Nicki Minaj right now, right? Yes, they have ulterior motives, but I also believe that the proximity, being in proximity, makes a huge difference. And so during that time, a huge part of the strategy was what you look like, and color played a huge part of that. And there were colored folks who were some who could pass were refusing to do so.
That's
Crazy.
correct. Even some of our politicians who could pass, they are blacker than you and I.
So, but their skin tone was also a part of that strategy in terms of our survival. So,
exactly.
Like it or love it, this is all a part of our journey, and I think it's important for us to tell those stories, to not be ashamed of them.
Right.
What it says to me is a people determined to survive. Let me get off right now because I'm about to start cussing. Let me go.
So what a beautiful conversation that Claudette Cloven has sparked, and so glad that we say her name now, because for a long time we weren't. It was just Rosa Parks. So we say her name, Claudette Cloven, and we thank her as being a contribute to Black liberation. Mike, thank you for joining us today, Professor.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to hearing from you again on issues that are important to our nation and to our community.
Right. Well, we definitely want you back to have that foreign affairs person to kind of break down what's happening. So,
absolutely.
Please, let's get that next week.
Who are specialists in foreign affairs in general, and in particular, some of them are excellent in terms of the Middle East.
All right. Black Press USA Morning Show family. This is Dr. Michael Davis. I'm Neil Anderson. For the latest in Black news, you want to head over to Black Press USA, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you.